Hello. Hi. Have you got a minute? Look, what I want to do in this video is take you for a deep dive into my new song called Water on the Moon, which is going to be released on Friday the 26th of February. By the time you get to this video, I suspect for many of you it will already be released, so go check it out. What I'm going to do is talk about it, and then towards the end of this video is I'm going to put in there the whole of my new video for Water on the Moon. So that's all the excitement you could possibly imagine coming on later in this video. All right, so where to begin? Well, if my previous song, I Think I Love You, was entirely non-autobiographical, I think it's fair to say this one is a bit more kind of closer to the mark, closer indeed to kind of what's actually been going on. So bear with me on this, because I think what we need to do, unfortunately, is talk about COVID, because I've really kind of steered clear of this. I mean, what do you want? Another person going on about their COVID experiences? Probably not. But and I've actually largely tried to avoid it in my songs as well, but it's quite difficult to do that entirely. So suddenly, in the latter part of last year, I'm just trying to think when I actually wrote this, I basically a whole COVID song came out, and I like it enough to include it in this new batch of songs. So and I hope you do too. But it's impossible on this one to avoid the subject, because this track is largely about dealing with solo lockdown, and that is indeed what I have mostly been dealing with, solo lockdown. And I think it's quite an odd and unique experience. So I get the fact that lockdown's not much fun for anybody. There are lots of situations where it's probably been pretty grim, and I totally appreciate that. All I'm saying here is I think for people who've, for whatever reason, have found themselves going into a lockdown period on their own, living by themselves, that suddenly realizing there's no prospect of seeing another living person in their own home with them for months and months and months, is pretty weird. It's pretty odd. And actually I think however resilient and tough anybody is, I think it's quite difficult. So let's a bit of disclosure here. Well, over the last few months I've seen my mum, I've seen a neighbour. That's about it, really. That's I've met up with the odd person outdoors. I think even that's possibly illegal. Don't tell anyone. But outdoors I think is a different prospect from indoors, as I think we're learning. So I've been pretty good, and it's meant long periods of time, days and days, weeks and weeks at a stretch, of really not seeing anybody, and it is a bit strange. So this is a song that is basically about the kind of growing lunacy that comes from spending too much time with yourself. Okay, so where this song came from is you might remember a news report back in the autumn, which was quite excitable, a rather bonkers news report that said that somebody had managed to sort of trace the fact that at some stage somewhere there had once been, if there wasn't already now, there had once been water on the moon. Just letting that huge piece of information sink in. Now look, what my response to that in a state of lockdown last autumn, and I have to say, it would be no different if I heard about this piece of news today, was to say, big deal. It's like, I'm in lockdown, not seeing anybody, and you're telling me about water on the moon. Is that I'm supposed to get excited? And so I did. I reacted in that very, irresponsibly kind of negative way, and very quickly I did have this little bunch of lines, and probably the tune as well, very quickly into my head, which was, somebody told me they found water on the moon, but I don't care, because I'm not going there anytime soon. So that's what landed in my head, and I thought, okay, that's a good basis to write a song. And I think that's the kind of thing I've talked about before. If you find something that feels a bit hooky, then it's worth having a go at writing something around it. So that was my starting point. Those few lines, I had a bit of tune there, and so off I went to flesh it out. And the fleshing out, actually, if I remember rightly, came pretty quickly, all the words, because, there was too much to say about being by yourself in lockdown. So let's break this down into verses. Basically, this song has got kind of 3 verses, and each one ends with that kind of little refrain about, somebody told me there's water on the moon, but I don't care because I'm not going there anytime soon. Although I do change it up one time. We'll come to that in a moment. Just to throw in something different as well. So the first verse is about looking in the mirror and always being a bit disappointed and frankly a bit bored of the fact that every time I look in the mirror, it's just me. This is the thing about just being with yourself. Now, look, I don't want to get too pompous about this, but I think this first verse was inspired a little bit by the philosopher Alain de Botton, who I just think is quite fun and normally spot on in his kind of insights and revelations. He talks about how sometimes people travel the world in order to kind of, leave behind their troubles and discover new things and to get away from it all. And I think he's pointed out, and I always found it quite amusing, that the trouble with going somewhere in the world to get away from it all, to leave it all behind, is unfortunately you take yourself with you. And I just checked out one of his brilliant quotes on this very subject, because this has really inspired my first verse. And he says, "A momentous, but until then overlooked fact was making itself apparent. I had inadvertently brought myself with me to the island." So that's his quote from one of his books about about travelling, about the nature of travelling. And I've always really enjoyed that whole notion of the fact that the trouble is you end up taking yourself with you. The trouble is when you're by yourself and you look in the mirror, is it's you. So I'm playing around with that a little bit in that first verse. It's always me looking back at me, etc., etc. So that's what inspired the early part of the song. Let's just have a listen to that first bit of verse, just to get the hang of kind of how the song sounds, and into that first little hook about somebody told me they found water on the moon. Okay.
The trouble with being alone, it really hits me when I look in the mirror and it's always me looking back again. It seems to make no difference wherever I am. I'm always stuck looking at the same man. And now I seem to have the attention span of a fly. I can't focus at all, and I don't know why. And oh, I'm going crazy since you went away. All of the structure has fallen out of my day. Somebody told me they found water on the moon, but I don't care. I'm not going there anytime soon.
What you'll also notice is it goes into the line about and now I seem to have the attention span of a fly. I quite enjoyed that. And I think I'm not alone in this. This is another a kind of characteristic I think that people have found in lockdown, particularly people who are by themselves and are basically going a bit stir crazy, with the monotony of it all, is this inability to focus on anything. And I definitely have been struck by that, literally just thinking, oh, well, let me sit down and do this, and then distracting myself with about 5 other things, and just, in the end, you probably, you achieve a quarter of what you might have once achieved. It's like when you're busy, you get everything done. When you're not busy, you get nothing done at all. And that's I think, unfortunately, a bit of a truism. So you'll have heard the lines there about the attention span of a fly, can't focus at all, etc., etc. So the other thing, a little more disclosure on this, is my most necessary other person in my life is not here, and in fact is in Hong Kong and stuck there because quarantines in both directions just make it ridiculously impossible to travel. And anyway, I think for me at this moment here in the UK, I think the rules would be that unless it's absolutely, entirely thoroughly necessary, it's kind of illegal to be travelling to another country. So, and anyway, in Hong Kong, I don't think we're welcome because we're coming from the UK where it's all been quite bad. So the prospect of seeing each other is remote for some more months to come, and that's been a little difficult. So as we get into the kind of the proper second verse, I'm talking then about, every afternoon talking on a video call, and I'm very grateful that we can talk at all, but it's not good enough. Basically I'm saying, yeah, okay, we can talk on a video call, but that's not really, it doesn't really do it, does it? And then going on to talk about having a very short fuse. Now, this is another thing. Actually, I don't think this has been too bad for me, but I have noticed it in myself and in certain other people, which is, just the Boardman monotony making you want to have an argument. I was talking to my sister the other day, and she said, she argues with her partner just so they can remind themselves that they're both still alive. And I totally get that. Just let's have a big flaming row for a few minutes, and then at least we know that we're both still living and breathing. There has been an element of that, I think, going on. Not just with me, I think with some friends, and who can blame anybody? It's better than actually splitting up over this horrible period, and there's been a bit of that going on as well. So again, I just want to acknowledge that, okay, I've been by myself. It's not been the end of the world. It's just been similar to the end of the world sometimes. But I'm sure we'll get through it. And the second time I come into that little line about, somebody told me they found water on the moon, I've changed it round and stuck in Christmas, because Christmas was a laughable disaster, I think, for us in the UK as we got towards the end of the year last year, on off, etc. And I've changed it around to being, somebody told me that Christmas they might postpone, but I don't care, because it's not really fair to spend it alone. So again, just wanting to play even more on that kind of, all these moments when we're all supposed to get together and have fun, and then suddenly it's just not going to happen, and instead you're just going to be staring at your four walls again. And let me say this as well, much worse in the middle of winter than it is in the middle of summer. I don't think I'm the only person to have found that either. So it's a jolly song, isn't it, so far? And then where do you go? In the last section, I talk about not really being able to sleep. And here's another thing. There have been countless nights where I've just sort of been lying there in bed thinking I really should be asleep. It is the middle of the night. But knowing at the same time that it doesn't actually matter that much, because I'm not going to have an alarm call at 7 to go racing into work somewhere. There is virtually no work, and it doesn't really matter. So I've been reasonably calm about that, but definitely lots of nights of lying in bed and thinking, here we go. So my last verse is really talking about, just drifting and waiting for something to happen. But then, this thing about sleeping and not sleeping, then I wonder why I wake up around noon. Well, actually, I don't often wake up that late, but noon, the quick ones amongst you will have worked out noon rhymes with moon. So then I could say, then I wonder why I'm waking up around noon. And somebody told me they found water on the moon, but I don't care, because I'm not going there anytime soon. Okay, enough of those lyrics. I've made a video, and what you'll find in the video is lots of me pulling faces, actually. I think this is my most pulling faces video, and so let me apologise for that in advance, and hopefully that's not going to put you off too much. And musically, there are a couple of things worth pointing out. I'm using a sound at the beginning which I have used before, and is ostensibly is a kind of a choir sound, but I don't really think it sounds much like a choir. But I do like using it. It's one of those sounds where, I think you'd be fooling yourself if you thought, if you said, oh, that sounds like a bunch of people singing together. It doesn't at all. It's something quite electronic and weird about it, and actually, it just makes one point for me, which I think is worth making, which is, ages ago I stopped worrying with the music and with sounds about whether it was authentically sounding like the thing that it describes itself to sound like. I sort of don't care, because for me it's not about whether it's authentic. It's not about whether it really is representing the sound of a choir singing. it's simply, what's important is simply, does it sound good? I don't really care what it pretends to be and how wide of the mark it is, because often it is. So more important is it going to sound good on my track? That's what I'm interested in, and only that, actually. So I'm going to play just that sound to you, just so you know what I'm talking about here. All right, well, look, I think we should just move on to watch the video itself. So this is Water on the Moon. It's my second track from 2021, and it's, second track from my new collection, whatever that's going to be later on this year. Plenty more to come, so stick with me, subscribe and share and do all those lovely things, because, well, the world depends on that really now, particularly in these difficult times. I mean, if showing a little bit of love is a marvellous thing. So thank you for sticking around. Enjoy the video, and I look forward to catching up with you really soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
The trouble with being alone, it really hits me when I look in the mirror and it's always me looking back again. It seems to make no difference wherever I am. I'm always stuck looking at the same man. And now I seem to have the attention span of a fly. I can't focus at all, and I don't know why. I know I'm going crazy since you went away. All of the structure has fallen out of my day. Somebody told me they found water on the moon, but I don't care. I'm not going there anytime soon. Each afternoon I talk to you on a video call. I'm grateful that we can't talk at all. So much gets lost in the things that we don't say. How do you feel the rest of your day? I seem to have right now a very short fuse. It seems I'm ready to pick a fight with anyone I choose. God help you if you have even slightly differing views. I don't want to hear any bad news. Somebody told me that Christmas they might postpone, but I don't care. It's not really fair to spend it alone. Recently I've been living my life under a big dark cloud. Remember the last time I truly laughed out loud. I've lost all interest in the things I used to do. I'm all at sea, drifting here without you. Each night I lie in bed, the room is black as ink. I try to stop the noise in my head, trying not to think. Too lucid and crazy dreams, eventually I sink. Then I wonder why I'm waking up around noon. Somebody told me they found water on the moon, but I don't care. I'm not going there anytime soon. Somebody told me they found water on the moon.